Happy Monday, everybody. All right, this week I'm going to review BRICS and give an update of what's been going on. So much has been going on. And as a recap of what BRICS is an acronym for five countries: Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. Five countries that control 40% of the world's population and over half of the world's natural resources. It's an important group of countries. Well, they've since, over the last few years, brought in about 24 additional countries into this trading group, and including Saudi Arabia, Iran, Turkey, Egypt, Ethiopia. So just here on the map, I'll show you where they're at. You got Russia, China, India, South Africa, and Brazil. Then you've got Iran, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Egypt, Ethiopia. So their trading group is right here. Pretty massive. Now, why do we care about BRICS? And why does the US care about BRICS? We care about them because they care about themselves. Now, we've reviewed how much natural resources and population they control. Well, it's kind of like an arm wrestling match right now between the United States and this BRIC group. And it kind of looks like the US is going it alone because the European Union isn't really helping us. So the dynamics right now are kind of one against this group of five and additional countries. All right, so there's been a lot going on in the news, several articles. I've taken down some notes here that I'll be reviewing just to make sure I'm covering everything. And so much has gone on. There's parades, Arctic intrigue, Greenland comes into play, nuclear weapons. So a lot going on. So to start with, what's going on with Trump? Well, he just had this meeting with Putin up in Alaska. Well, Russia is part of the BRICS group, and one of its leaders is really being led by Russia and China. Part of what he's trying to do is end the war in Ukraine and reward that with financial incentives, removing the financial restrictions that we've put on Russia if they play nice, as well as increased trade deals, which would be good for the two countries. Now, let's go back to 1972. Richard Nixon went to Russia and actually went to China based on Kissinger's recommendations to try to split up this union that was growing between the Soviet Union and China. It worked. Nixon was able to kind of drive a wedge between the two countries, really through additional trade agreements between the United States and China, encouraging China to leave behind Russia, which there was already starting to be some breaking going on between the two countries with border disputes, as well as China wasn't following the traditional Marxist, the Soviet Union's Marxist route in their communism. So Nixon was able to exploit this and drive a wedge further. Well, right now it looks like Trump's trying to do the opposite. So we'll call it the reverse Nixon Kissinger plan, where what he's trying to do is split up this group using economic incentives and penalties to different people. So he's trying to bring Russia over here. Meanwhile, India has been buying a lot of Russian oil. Well, what does Trump do about that? He slapped tariffs onto India, saying, no, no, India. And what did India do? They complied. They've slowed down buying the Russian oil because India needs our trade relationship. Well, what happened to that Russian oil? China started buying even more of it. China started buying up all of the oil that India had been doing. So Russia's been fine with that. So then Trump put additional tariffs on China, trying to penalize them for partnering with Russia. Meanwhile, he's trying to put his arm around Putin, saying, hey, don't you want back in the fold? So it's a very interesting game to watch, where he's trying to break up this group and make new relationships where they haven't necessarily been before. But instead of building new relationships with China, he's trying to build those relationships with Russia. But I think it's for the same purpose. Okay, what's China, Russia, all these countries doing in response to that? Well, they're pushing back. This week, China is holding a massive military parade, and they're inviting all of the BRICS countries to come attend. Actually, they brought in an additional country, Kim Jong-un from North Korea. He's not invited to any party. Well, he's going to this party, and that's being noticed by Washington. Meanwhile, who's not invited? The West. So it's a show of strength and unity that China's trying to do, and China is leading this role as it's clear they're trying to create a multipolar world order where the US can still be a world power, but now you've got China flexing its muscles, and they're doing it with a military parade, which is also on the heels of our military parade that we just held. So these things aren't going on by accident. All right, what else? Oh, meanwhile, what's one thing that China's really rich in that we're at a disadvantage of, and that's natural resources, especially rare earth minerals. So Trump is pushing even harder with our diplomatic efforts to bring Greenland into the fold, right? So let's go back to that map. So you got Greenland up here, which is almost as big as its own continent, and you can see its strategic importance here for the United States, not just in land position, which is important for military because Russia's right here, but also for all the natural resources. Well, by Trump trying to coax Greenland back into the US fold, he's really making Denmark mad because Denmark's saying, wait a minute, that's our territory. You can't just take it. And Trump's saying, we're not just going to take it. Well, we might, but we're also willing to offer to buy it. Okay, Denmark's one of our allies. So you can see that Trump is walking this line where he's almost breaking away from the Western European countries saying, hey, if the United States has to go this alone, first of all, we can. Second of all, we will if that's what's necessary. And we'll see what happens. Okay, last thing. One of the things that Trump and Putin were talking about in Alaska is nuclear disarmament. For better or for worse, you can say a lot of things about Trump, but one thing that he has been adamant about is avoiding military escalation and bringing the United States into conflict, especially with nuclear powers. And so in this meeting in Alaska, one of the things they were talking about is joint nuclear disarmament. And it looked like Putin was open to the idea. So then Trump took advantage of that and said, hey, China, come join the party. Join us in this nuclear disarmament. It's good for the whole world. Well, what did China say? No way, Jose. They said, you've got way more nuclear weapons than we have. China has several hundred compared to the US and Russia, which they're in the thousands. So China said, we're looking out for our number one. And meanwhile, you still got us smoked with nuclear weapons. So we're not going to slow down at this point because there's no need. So China is then kind of puffing up their chest to these maneuvers as well. It's a fascinating game. There's many players here. You've kind of got two teams. You've got the West and then the BRICS groups. But among the West, there's not necessarily unity. And you've got the biggest player, which is the United States, flexing their muscles. You've got the BRICS countries, and they can take turns taking the lead. Right now, it looks like China is kind of in the lead, although Russia also is as well. So that's where we're at. Okay. What does that mean for us? Well, in terms of natural resources, which we like as far as investments, all of these dynamics are good news for the price of hard assets. Now, could there be economic conflict? Yes. Could that lead to inflation? Yes. Could it lead to military conflict? Yes. We're not taking a position on that. What we're saying is, would that affect the prices of what we're encouraging in investments? And yes, probably. And so that's good news for your portfolios. And Greg and I find the chessboard fascinating. with the BRICS versus the US. So I hope you did too. And with that, happy Labor Day. You guys have a great week. See you next week.